All right, well, today's philosophy video is very simple, and it is a philosophy that is personal to me. And it is the advent of the Trump era. And it is the idea essentially that young males of particular groups are definitely swinging right in the political landscape. Now, why is this? People like Trump, people who are, showing strength. They're showing that a side of the human political spectrum is deeply flawed, and that is the left. And the left just cannot get it right. I mean, they are they are their own most worst enemy, the left is. Uh, so yeah, we have a situation, and I would call it you know a situation of very like awareness in the Western world, where young males are disenfranchised. They are being told they're the problem. They are being told that they don't have a voice. They're being told that they don't matter. They're being told that they have no power. Now, let's think back to history. Last time that happened and something bad happened. Could it have something to do with beer halls in some European country right before a major gigantic conflict around the world? Potentially. So we have this situation in Western worlds. Countries, other countries, this is a phenomenon that affects them too. Places of Eastern Europe, we see it happening in some Asian countries, South American countries, even, um, where you have an entire class of people who are turning completely and utterly to the right. Now, look at this. ICE, it cuts age limits for boosting hiring. They're putting billions into hiring. They're doing all these things to incentivize men who want to protect their country, their societies, their ideals, their ways of life in the Western world, who have been told for so long by the left that we're a problem, that these are not our countries, that we're not important, that we should do this and we should do that. It's the rise of a group of people who are just younger people, are just swinging as far as they can to the right. And why is that? And is that a problem? People are starting to see that the left is weak. The left does not have their best interests at heart. And young males in particular are saying to themselves, well, why would I be a part of a group of people who wants to, eliminate who I am? They want to, disenfranchise me, and they see this world of destruction coming to their societies. They're seeing that there is a badness to the left. Nobody wants lawless cities. Nobody wants, immigrants going around doing what they're doing in UK. And Europe, Canada, US, Australia are centers of this movement. This is the reality that we're living in, and the left really has nobody to blame but themselves. They have disenfranchised an entire generation of young men into thinking that they're a problem, that they shouldn't exist, that they shouldn't be a part of this globalized society. Now, what is globalization? You see it all around. It is the increasing interconnectedness of the world, driven by factors like trade, communication, and cultural exchange. But for many people, for many men in Western countries, what this means is our countries are not our own, that they're a shared resource, and that countries like, China, Uganda, South America, Mexico, that these countries are as much owners of, these Western countries as we are. And that has a potential to cause this swing so far and so intense that it is triggering this kind of new movement of youth that is seeing that this is not going to work, that this is a problem, and that this is ultimately making us weaker and leading to things like things like parents whose 20-year-old son can't even get a job at a grocery store because there's too many, mass immigration. There's students from other countries who don't even live here that are a part of their taking over, so to speak. And it may be on the surface that they're not even doing this, that they're just people who come from war torn countries and they're just coming here to make a living to try and get away from their side. Sure, there are plenty of people like that. But there is also another side of that, and a lot of young men are seeing now that the side of that is, nobody's colonizing these other countries, so why should they be able to come here? And this is a heavy thing. And nowhere is it more prevalent of where this is going as the U.S. Doge staffer, big balls beaten up in D.C. Like, if the U.S. didn't need any more attention, that two teenagers, they use that again. They're very careful with their words, aren't they? But we know the truth of what happened here, and this is just another kink in the road of the U.S. flying as far to the right. Donald Trump won the presidency. There is he has incentivized so many people to swing that way. And Trump is getting tough on the world stage, and that show of power is power. For so long, we saw the Biden administration just be weak, lying through their teeth, spreading this DEI stuff all throughout our societies, and it has just left the world in complete and utter shambles. And like we are a people that need to protect our sovereignties, and to go on the world stage and be weak and forcing all this weird ideology around the world, it is wrong. It is just, and like the Doge thing that like brought it all to light of this US aid stuff. It's like, why are we doing that? Like, is that like there has to be a global leftist think tank that is creating this whirlwind that they caused themselves. like I'm telling you right now, I'm never going to be some great leader that's up on stage talking to people in the huge crowds and sending them, but they're going to go there on their own because the left is just the party of weakness. And young people are seeing that. And when you do things like, trying to make it seem like other people, like young people, don't matter, that a certain group of them is unimportant and wrong, we have nothing to apologize for. I have nothing to apologize for who I am as a right-leaning male, far, fairly far right-leaning male. But that political ideology is important to people sometimes. And I'm telling you this, that very few men, very few men who have a spine are going to say, let's teach trans stuff to children, like, and no young male with a spine is going to say, let's let as many people from third world countries into our country and just like give them all this resources. Like, you cannot convince people to do it. But I mean, there's levels of these people. I mean, far left males have been bought into this thought that the world's a peaceful place and everybody can just get along and everybody's just nice, even if they come from, a country full of just absolute abhorrent things. And yes, there are good people and bad people all over the world, but when you take people from a country that has barely left the Stone Age, you're just asking for trouble. And a lot of young men are seeing this, and this is why the political spectrum around immigration has changed so greatly. And this is like a no-brainer situation for a lot of these young people coming up and seeing the era of Trump and seeing the era of Kyle Rittenhouse, a young, very right-leaning male who kind of became a little bit of a folk hero because of these riots that were going on all over the country, and they were riots and there was a lot of violence, and he just was protecting his own space, so to speak, and became kind of this folk hero of the right. Now, wherever wherever you are on the spectrum of political siding, you have to know that like a person like Kyle Rittenhouse is not going to accept the idea that he's just going to give up his political leanings because someone tells him he's a bad person. Oh, you're a bad person because you don't fly rainbow flag, or oh, you're a bad person because you don't like you know criminals, and you're like everybody gets everybody's nice, kind of thing. A young man like that is not going to believe it when someone says, be a nice, better person. Be nice. Just be nice to everyone and let us get our way. That is the biggest problem with the left, and that is where they have totally lost the plot with these young men, is because you cannot tell someone to just be nice and do what we say. And that is the hallmark of the left. That is what they do. Is that they are like, you know, like this big balls assault. Like you're talking about this. Like the media would be perfectly happy with this not happening and not existing. Because why? Because Big Balls should just be nice, and he should just not blame the attackers who beat him up, who were assaulting a young woman. Uh, 10 juveniles. And you see this in leftist cities, is that you get these big roaming groups of people causing all kinds of problems, and it's like we got to do something about it. But the left will be quickly say they're just youths, they're just juveniles. Think of the people. Don't be mad at these young kids. They're disenfranchised, and that is another point that brings up the fact that you cannot convince a bunch of, like, you can't convince from the story that there's anything but just badness coming from those 10 U's. So, I mean, this is a story that look at the Googling of search of it. It's very like major networks, MSNBC. Let's see, MSNBC. Let's see. Oh, would you look at that? Would you look at that? MSNBC doesn't even have a story on it. Well, what are you talking about, MSNBC? This is a news story. This is a Doge member. He's at Washington D.C. The left is just completely lost the plot, and their trickery and their foolishness. You know what I mean? Trump threatens control of DCC following a staffer. So look at how they've spun that. You know, look at how MSNBC or NBC News or whatever, these leftist media, fake news, as Trump would say, which he's right about, is like how they'll spin it. It's like they're not talking about a victim who is beaten up in Washington, D.C. They're not talking about a young woman who is assaulted. They're not talking about a group of 10 males running around causing chaos and destruction. No, 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 no. That's not the story. The story is Trump threatens federal control of that. So they've just the way they spin it, like man, like the way that they try and make it this this way is has made young men. People are smart, man. Fucking people are freaking smart. And when you see stuff like this, I used to be pretty centrist. Like pretty. I would even say that. Like I used to be a type of man who would. I didn't really care politically. I just believed in all this stuff, and whatever. And I am still that way in my core values. I think that everybody should be. I think everybody should be taken care of, and I don't think we should be, mean or Yahtzees. But at the same time, when you have media openly trying to mask a groving gang of 10-year-old whatevers, youths, sluggers, teenagers, whatever is trying to get away from the real, like their real identities, or in Europe, oh, a man or a driver, a car plows through, people. You start to see that the media twists and turns and tries to make you just think like everything is okay, when the right is showing that, you know, young men are changing what conservative looks like. The story really isn't about that. Why are so many more men right leaning than women? And, you can blame Joe Rogan, you can blame all these people, but, you know, people are smart, young people are smart, and it's easy to see that the right is right. I mean, it is like, no, we don't want roving gangs of 10-year-old youths, teens, sluggers running around through the streets, or a driver, committing terrorist attacks. Whoever, like, find the root of the problem and fix it. Like, that is like the common sense thing. But the left has disenfranchised themselves with globalization by never going against that narrative. They never try and break free from the, obviousness of the situation. Immigration is bad, so we got to stop it. We got to deport tons of these people, especially if they're illegal and criminal, and, start calling a spade a spade. So we have those things. Those are the reasons for a lot of young people, you know, turning right, because it's like, well, do you want to grow up in a society where everybody's unhappy and violent? No. So that's my reasons why most young people nowadays, a lot of them, are turning right. And the left really just has themselves to blame.